Hey guys, welcome to my channel. So in today's video we're going to discuss about JavaScript deep concept that you should know. So writing the first code in JavaScript may take one day to you, but being deep and knowing the unknown and background things may bring you the whole career. So yeah, in today's video we're going to discuss about in-depth concept of JavaScript. So let's continue with that. So the first concept that we're going to discuss about is scoping in JavaScript. So first of all, what does it mean by scope? In short, where you can access your declaration in code, it is called scope. So we have basically three kinds of scopes here. One is the global scope, second is the function scope, and third is local scopes. And the difference between the global scope and the local scope is like global scope accessible across the file. So you can access it anywhere in your code in a particular file. But local scopes are only accessible within a block. That means they cannot be accessible outside a particular parenthesis. If a parenthesis is open and you will declare any of your local variable over there, so scope of that particular variable will be accessible until the same parenthesis is not closed. So once it is closed, it will not be accessible outside of this parenthesis. For example, here in this piece of code, so const is the local variable, so it will be accessible within these parentheses, but if you try to access this outside, for example here I'm consoling the value of this, it will not work. So for better understanding, let's discuss about this in depth. Yeah, so first of all, let's discuss about the global scope. So global scopes will always be declared with the var keyword. So let's suppose var foo is the global scope and it is going to have default value as 10. Sorry, the v should be small. Okay, so var foo is 10 and we have a function foo function and if I try to print this value here, so it will be accessible. So if I run this command, so you can see 10 is printing here, right? Cool. So this is the global scope and I can have any number of functions in this particular file. This foo will be still accessible across the file. So this is we called global scope. After that, there is another concept comes which is called function scope. That means if I declare this variable inside this function and if I try to access the value of this foo outside somewhere here, let's suppose, so it will basically give you error because not even hoisting is going to happen. So what does it mean by hoisting is? Hoisting means if a variable is declared with a var keyword, so that particular variable will get hoisted on top of their function. So this is the foo function and this var foo will get defined here like this. So even if I don't add any value here, so you will see it is going to return undefined. So because it is get hosted here on top of this function, the very first line with the default value of undefined. So instead of this, if I call this function over here, so you will notice it is printing undefined, right? Now, so if you wanted to understand more in depth about hoisting, so I have attached a link of this video description section. In short, the hoisting basically happening on a function level. So now another question came like, what if it is a global variable? So it is not happening on a function level because there is no function either. So for your in-depth understanding, every function is an object in JavaScript. So this global is going to be linked with the window object. So as you know, this foo function is indirectly basically an object. It is not going to be incorrect if I just say every variable get hosted on top of their object. So similarly, this is happening. This is getting attached to the window object because this is outside. So even the file is empty, but still there is always a global object which is Windows. Okay, so that's how it is working. So indirectly we have only two scopes. One is a function scope and second is the local scope. Okay, I hope you understand the concept of scoping here. So global, okay, if you don't want to understand it in that typical way, you can keep in mind, okay, if any variable which is declared on the global level, so that is going to have the global scope, and any variable which is inside the function, it is going to have the function scope. That means this variable cannot be accessible outside of this function. Similarly this one, so okay, so I can say foo function scope. So if this variable I try to access outside, it is going to give error here. You can see it is not defined because we are getting reference error. All right, so if I try to access this foo, so it is going to give undefined because it's a global scope. All right, so this is about the global and function scope. Now let's discuss about the block scope. So in JavaScript we have two way to declare variable basically in the blocks variable. So you can say let any variable which is declared by this let keyword. So it is going to be a block scope, and there is one more which is const, and it is going to be also block scope. So now the thing is, these two will always be accessible within these two parentheses blocks. They cannot be accessible outside of these two blocks. For example, if I have a function here, and in this function, if I declare this over here and try to console the value, if I save it, so you can see it is returning basically this console log. So we can simply, instead of this, we can return directly foo. Yeah, so it is returning 10, right? So it is printing 10 over here. Cool, so it's working. Now you will say it is working like similar to function scope, right? But there is a difference here within function and block scope, within function scope and block scope. So here, because we have no nested scope inside, so that's why it is looking like this function scope behavior. But what if we have another block inside? Let's suppose a if condition here. So if I'll say if this equal to 20, it should go inside and it should look for this 20 and should return foo plus const foo. Alright, so if I'll save it, it is going to return 30 to me. Alright, but now what will happen if I try to print? Okay, now what will happen if I make this false and if I try to look for this foo outside of this block? If I save it, see, it is giving error. The foo is not defined, right? Because it is declared by let. Now if I just switch it, if I make it var here and if I save it, you will see it is getting undefined. That means this foo is getting hoisted with the var keyword on top of this function with undefined value. Because it is not going inside this block, that's why it is not having this updated foo value here, but it is going to have the default value which is undefined and get it added by hoisting of JavaScript concept. Alright, so this is what basically function hoisting and block hoisting. I hope you understand now. Again, if I put let here, so it is going to give me error, and if I make the condition true, it is going to give me the returned value which is getting added by this foo. Alright, cool then. So that's all about scoping. Like we have three type of scoping here: global scope, function scope, and local scope. Alright, every value which is declared, all the values which are declared on a global level, those values having the global scope and they can be accessible across the file anywhere. Okay, then the second is function scope. Function scope is limited to the function. If any variable which is declared with a var keyword within a function, so all the variable will be declared on top of the function, the very first line, with the default value undefined. Okay, doesn't matter if you declare inside a if block or anywhere in the function, they will always get hoisted on top of the function. Okay, this is about the function scoping. Block scope is basically let and const. So let is going to have the block scope. They will be accessible within this parenthesis only. They cannot be accessible outside. They are not getting hoisted. Basically they are getting hoisted, but they do not have they do not have the default value. So without declaring the, so basically that's why it is giving you error. So okay, I hope this is clear to you. Now yeah, I forgot about the const. So const are also block scope, but there is a difference between let and const. So the only difference is, like, if you have declared this variable with the const value and later on if you wanted to change the value to 40, it is not going to happen, because you will notice it is going to give error. So these are constant. You can add a value in a particular constant only once at the time of declaration. You cannot change the value, but there is other way of doing it. For example, if it is not a variable, any primitive value, it's a non-primitive value in object. So we can say, okay, name, so name is like codeWithAmi, and subscribe to the channel, appreciate that, or it true. So basically make it false by default. Now if I wanted to make the value, let's suppose you subscribe to my channel and this value become true, but this is the concept. Ideally this should not happen, right? But if I do it in that way, like if I try to change the nested values of this object, for example subscribe, make it true, that means you subscribe to my channel. So if I save it now, and instead of this, because this is going to give error, and I will just check if this exists, and just return me this so we can check it out. You can see the value is updated now, right? But if I try to do another thing, if I try to make it like this, if I just change the entire object, basically I'm creating a new object now. This time it is not gonna work. You cannot reassign it. Basically you can make the changes in the existing object, but you cannot redefine it basically. Okay, so I hope you understand. So if there is any primitive value, they cannot be directly changed because you are always going to reassign it. But if there is any non-primitive value like arrays or functions, you can change it, the nested values, by referring to the same object. You cannot reassign another new object or new array to this variable. Okay, so I hope you understand. Alright, so this is all about the scoping in JavaScript. Alright, so let's discuss about another confusing in-depth concept of JavaScript, which is hoisting. You may have heard this word a lot, but what is this actually? In short, hoisting is a mechanism in JavaScript which some declaration do before their execution. Like a bubble, the JS engine will bring them up to the first and declare them before the others. Like the var keyword for variable declaration. Variables introduced with var can be called before assigning the value, and you will get the undefined result, or the functions that declared with the function keyword can be called before the declaration in the JavaScript. So this is all the blah blah blah, just theory. Okay, I'll show you some practicality. So in our previous example here, so in this example, so this is just simple example. I have this const here which is doing nothing as of now. We have a function is going to have this let variable which is assigned with 10, and it is getting returned. If I call it, it should return me 10, right? That's pretty fine, right? That's cool. But now what does it mean by hoisting? So basically what hoisting is saying, the hoisting says any variable with the var keyword, okay, any function. So if in JavaScript, if JavaScript find out these two anywhere, so any variable or any function created by these two keywords, so all those functions and variables get hosted on top of the JavaScript file, okay? But there's a catch with the var keyword, because var is going to have the function scope. It always get hoisted on top of function. If it's a global scope, it will get declared on top of the file, but if it is inside a function, so it is going to hoist on top of a function. And for more in-depth understanding about the scoping, I have created a separate video on this. You will understand let scope and var keyword over there. So I have added the link in the description section, so you can check this out. So for now, the hoisting is basically this: wherever JavaScript find these two keywords, it will get hoisted on top, and in the var, the default value will be assigned as undefined. So basically we don't need to do that. JavaScript will do this for us. For example, we have variable x, so JavaScript will do basically for us automatically, and the similar thing will go with functions. So that's why JavaScript does that, because for example, if I have okay, let me do this. Okay, for example, any function which declared with the function keyword, you can call this function even before it declaration. If I save it, it is still going to return me 10, and it is not even declared yet. That means it is called first and declared later. So this is what JavaScript wanted to prevent. So for this, JavaScript found this solution. So any function which is declared with function keyword, it will get, so automatically it will put on top from here. All right. So that's why this code is not breaking. All right. So similar thing goes with var. So we have var x10 here. So for example, if I declare this here, and I will add it 30 here, okay, and I try to console the value before the declaration of the x. If I save it, it is going to give me undefined, right? Even it is declared after that. And if I print it again here, so it is going to give me 30 this time. All right. For better understanding, I'll do these things. So it is going to give me 30. And if I do two things, so first it is giving undefined, and then it is going to be giving me 30. So because it is not declared yet, and it is not even assigned 30 yet, that's why JavaScript put it on top and added a default value as undefined. So it is working like this only. All right, so this is how hosting works in JavaScript basically. So that's all. Don't need to be super confused about it. Just watch this video and you can get an idea about it. All right, so if you have any question, you can ask me in the comment section. I always check my comments and reply. All right, so let's talk about the next topic. Next thing is IIFE, IIFE. So this phrase stands for immediate invoked function expression. A very complex name, right? Don't worry about it. It's very simple. So which means declaring a function that runs as soon as it is defined and allows making variable and functions private and ensuring asynchronous code in loop is executing correctly. All right, so this is also a theory. I'll give you a better example. So this is what we called IIFE. So an IIFE is something which start with parentheses. All right, so this parenthesis is ended here. All right, so and after that it is getting executed. So basically whatever I put inside this code, I don't need to call this function. So you can see this function doesn't have any name because it doesn't require one. So if I basically say let x equal to 10 and I don't need to console, basically I don't need to call it again because I'm already calling it. So if I save it, it will automatically get triggered and console the value of x. Basically x is a string here. Change it, it is going to print 10. So basically it is immediately invoking. I don't need to call it. So you might feel like this is not a useful thing, right? Why someone will do that? Because I can create simple functions and I can call it whenever I need it, right? But this is very useful because if you will notice in jQuery here, entire jQuery code is written inside this basically inside this IIFE, and whatever you write in the inside this IIFE, it will remain in this IIFE. It will not be executing outside of this IIFE. So many major library basically use this IIFE pattern to keep their code private, and so because they have huge number of functions, huge number of functionality over there, right? So if they do not use IIFE, so there will be always chance of mixing the functionality. So basically keep a particular functionality a private thing, so we use this IIFEs. So in JavaScript, in jQuery, we're using it, and underscore, and there are many other libraries that basically do the same thing. Alright, so yeah, next thing is currying. Currying is a very advanced concept. Basically this is an advanced technique to work with JavaScript functions, actually transforming functions and allowing you to pass argument to the function in different steps and make it callable at a different steps level. Basically this thing is called currying. I'll help you with a better example. So indirectly, so basically currying is something like this. I asked this question at the time of interview, so I'll tell you what it is first. So currying is basically a concept where we call nested functions directly within a function. So interviewer can ask you a question like this. So if we can have a same function which will return, if I pass two arguments here, 5, basically it's going to return the sum of these two arguments. At the same time, if I pass these two arguments separately in a function, so it should still return me 5. So how are we going to do it? So to doing it, we have a simple concept here of currying, because this can be achievable with currying only. So in currying, basically we call nested functions. So if we just have to achieve this first functionality, so we can easily do that by adding console.log here, and that's all. Simple a plus b, that's all we need to. We can have x and we can have y. I'm going to return sorry, x plus y. That's all we need to do, right? If I save it, oh sorry, I forgot the name. Yeah, so it is going to return me 5. So first case is achievable. But now if I comment this one here, and if I do the same thing over here, try to console the value of this, if I save it, if I run it, alright, so I'm going to get this error because sum is not a function. Actually sum is a function, but it is going to trigger this function twice. I mean, one is for the first levels, second is for inner level, basically a nested function. So we need a nested function here. Alright, so it is going to be an anonymous function, and I'm going to just do, so what we have to do is, the first is going to have only one parameter, if you notice, second is having two parameters. So we need to check whether we have two parameters or one parameter. So here what we can do, we have a concept of arguments in JavaScript. So we can check if the number of arguments, how many arguments are there, arguments spellings. So arguments are just kind of not an array, but it will give you the length. So if it is 2, then I'm going to return x plus y, but this is correct because I'm not going to use this y anymore here, because we can have only one property here, right? So instead of this, we can say, okay, similar to array, we can have 0 position, and here we can have second position. Alright, so it is going to return me sum for the second case here, but now for the first case, it is pretty simple. Now I just have to return me x plus y. You will say from where the y will come. Y will come from here, because second parameter is taking also some values with it, right? So second parameter is having 3 here, and first is going to have 2 here. So now if I uncomment this one, run it, you can see it is giving 5 plus 5. Alright, so that's all how we do that. Okay, similarly we can handle any number of in-depth functions here, and numbers of nested function calls basically with the help of currying. So thank you guys, thank you so much for watching this video. That's all for today, and I hope you have learned something today, and if you did, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel and pressing the bell icon, because I always keep uploading this type of content, and you will get the notification as soon as I upload any new video. So thank you guys, thanks you for time, have a good day, bye, take care. All right.